so that if anybody else has to join, they can join in. Okay. Class will start. All right. Any which ways, we've already finished with Western political thinkers. I've taught you Plato, Aristotle, Machiavelli. All right. So I have already told you that Plato and Aristotle basically belong to ancient period. All right. Then I told you Machiavelli was a transitional thinker from medieval. The era was getting transferred or transformed into modern era. So Machiavelli is exactly in the middle. All right. But today we are going to be talking about Thomas Hobbes, who's considered to be a modern thinker. I'll talk about Hobbes. Hobbes, Locke, Rousseau are generally considered together and they are called as social contract theorists. All right. Because all three of them are put together or clubbed together to make social contract theory because their methodology is similar. All right. Now, in that, our syllabus only talks about Thomas Hobbes as well as John Locke. All right. But I'll give you a little overview about Rousseau also so that you know what Rousseau is all about. All right. So today we'll be focusing more on social contract, especially Thomas Hobbes. All right. Again, like I tell you, with all the thinkers, each and every thinker has his way of thinking. You and me may not agree with it, but that is our point of view. All right. So let's try to understand Thomas Hobbes from his psychology. So I'll give you a background of his and then explain why he thinks what he thinks. All right. Now, I want all of you to pay attention because now what I'm going to tell you is the most important part. All right. So this theory is called as social contract theory. All right. Now, here I'm covering Hobbes, your Western political thinkers, topic 10 of your paper 1, part A, Western political thinkers. All right. In that, this is the fourth thinker I'm going to be talking about, Thomas Hobbes. But Thomas Hobbes, as well as the next thinker, the fifth thinker, John Locke, like I told you, are considered a part of social contract theory. So I'll just give you an overview of what is social contract so you understand what we're talking about. And then we'll go on to discuss Hobbes in particular. All right. So when you talk about social contract theory, okay, it is basically a theory which says that or treats state as a product of mutual agreement between men created with a definite purpose and to serve certain social needs. See, the word itself says social. Social means society, people coming together. That is social. It's a contract. What is contract? I've written here. It's a mutual agreement. So it's a mutual agreement between the men or the people who constitute a society, and that's the reason why it is called as social contract. All right. Again, next, what is the end of social contract theory? Of course, see, when you make an agreement, when you enter into an agreement, enter into a contract, you have certain particular aim or objective in mind. All right. So each one of the thinkers, like I told you, social contract consists of three thinkers: Hobbes, Locke, and Rousseau. Our syllabus doesn't talk about Rousseau, it only talks about Hobbes and Locke. All right. So when you talk about these two thinkers in particular, all right, they are going to give you their concept of social contract or a mutual agreement between people, all right, who constitute a society for a definite purpose. Now, when you talk about Thomas Hobbes, I'm going to teach you today. He wants to create an absolute sovereign, an absolute state. While Locke, the second thinker, is the one who talks about limited sovereignty or a limited state. All right. So it is a mutual agreement between men created with a definite purpose. For Hobbes, the purpose is absolute state. For Locke, it is limited state and to serve certain social needs. What were the social needs? I'm going to teach you today. So there were certain factors which were responsible for Hobbes believing that absolute sovereign is the solution for all problems. Locke had his own experiences which made him realize that, okay, look, these are the kind of people we are dealing with. So this is the kind of polity we should have. So definitely it is a mutual agreement between society created with a definite purpose to serve certain social needs. Okay, now these definite purpose and social needs is subjective because it depends upon Thomas Hobbes and John Locke. Okay. Now, social contract theory belongs to the mechanistic concept of state. What is the meaning of mechanistic? Mechanistic means it is an artificial creation. That's what it is. See, a social contract, that is a mutual agreement between the people who constitute a society, come and create a state. So what does it mean? That state is an artificial creation. It was not naturally created. Okay. This is only for social contract thinkers. Okay. So social contract thinkers think that state is an artificial creation by means of a social contract. All right. So because of this reasons, it is called as mechanistic concept of theory of state. All right. Next, outline of a theory. Now, simplistically put, I'll just tell you what it is. Then when I start teaching you Thomas Hobbes, you'll understand it in better way. All right. See, social contract theory basically implies that before the origin of state, there was a time when men lived without a recognized civil law and state called as state of nature. Okay. Then men voluntarily entered into an agreement to create a state. So social contract theory traces the origin of state through logic instead of historical evidence. Class, first concept. Social contract, you've understood, is a mutual agreement between people of society or people constituting the society. They entered into a contract. Okay. So therefore the state became an artificial creation. But how did the men enter into a social contract? This history is nothing but the concept that we are going to be discussing in the outline of a theory. That Hobbes and Locke are going to basically tell you what is human nature, what are the kind of people they're dealing with. Remember, I taught you Machiavelli last Sunday. What did I tell you? Machiavelli had a very negative view of human nature. He said they're egoistic, selfish, constantly quarreling. Hobbes also believes the same thing. All right. So, because of that, what does Machiavelli tell the prince? That prince, you have to be a fox as well as a lion. All right, you have to be smart like a fox, cunning like a fox, as well as courageous and brave like a lion. Same human nature you will see basically in Hobbes's theory. All right. Now, each one of us go back to what Plato said. State is individual writ large. What is a state? State constitutes people like you and me. So what if you and me are selfish? State is going to be selfish. If you and me are reasonable, state is going to be reasonable. So human nature, okay, tells you about how individuals in a state are. All right. Each and every individual makes a society, that is a state of nature, because we are collectively going to reflect the society. If we are selfish, state of nature is going to be the same. If we are good, state of nature is going to be peaceful. Okay. So human nature decides the state of nature. State of nature decides the nature of state. What is the nature of state? Simplistically put, for Thomas Hobbes, it was absolute sovereign state. For Locke, it is limited state. So kind of people you're ruling over, those people collectively is going to reflect how the state is. So if the people are good, nature of state is going to be limited. If the people are going to be bad, then the state of nature is going to be absolute. So human nature, state of nature reflects your nature of state. Okay. But how can I create a nature of state? How can I create just a state? Through contract. Okay, because I have already said its state is an artificial creation according to social contract theory. So because I have to artificially create a state, I'm justifying creation of a state by an agreement through explaining the human nature, explaining when people collectively how they will behave in a state of nature, and because of human nature and their collective nature together will reflect in the nature of state. Okay. And because of this nature of state will come into being because of a contract. So the kind of state I want, the kind of goal, kind of objective I want to satisfy, that will be written in details, or it will be included in details in the term of contract, and that will decide the character of sovereignty. All right, class, have you understood what I have said? That first, social contract is nothing but a mutual agreement between the people, all right, who constitute a society. So it is an artificial creation of a state. Second thing you have to remember is there's going to be human nature. Like Plato said, state is nothing but individual written large. If human beings are selfish, state is going to be selfish. Human beings and state of nature defines your nature of state, the kind of state that will rule over you. Okay, but how is that state created? That state is created by terms of contract. All right, so terms of contract, that each one of us will come together, the mutual agreement that each of us will come and enter in together will decide the nature of state, and it will also decide, most importantly, the kind of sovereignty. Have you understood what is social contract theory? Class, just show me a thumbs up. Don't worry, I'm going to go into detail, but I just want you to understand that this is hypothetical. All right, this never happened. It is to justify. Like I told you with Plato, what ought to be, similar concept here. It is hypothetical. All right, okay, I'll continue now. Okay, so you've understood human nature, state of nature, nature of state, terms of contract, character of sovereignty. All of this is going to come back again when I teach you Hobbes. All right. Please understand that social contract theory is hypothetical. It's a myth. It never happened. Okay. It was only used by Thomas Hobbes and used by John Locke and Rousseau. Okay. To just give us a justification for their concept of social contract theory leading to their particular end. All right, so it's a speculative theory, it's a hypothetical theory. Only thing you have to remember is that it belongs to mechanistic concept, that is state is artificial creation, not a natural institution. So social contract theory believes that state is artificial. Common sense, because it's coming because of contract. See, social contract creates a state. So definitely it's an artificial creation. It's not a natural creation. Okay, now let's come to your Thomas Hobbes. All right, class, Thomas Hobbes is comparatively simple also and complex also. All right, so you will have to revise it continuously. There are certain percepts which I will read from the book itself for you so that you get absolute clarity, okay, about what we're talking about. Now, when we talk about Hobbes, see, we're talking about modern age. All right, so first thing about Hobbes is he is a modern thinker. All right, because of his methodology and concept of sovereignty. See, he's actually, he belongs to 16th and 17th century. All right, so remember Renaissance, I told you 14th to 17th century Renaissance was happening. Humanism, scientific temper, what Mike Machiavelli was talking about. Hobbes also belongs to the same era. Okay, so you can see that influence in Hobbes. All right, now let's start with your Hobbes. When you talk about Hobbes, his famous quote, generally asked for a short notice, fear and I were born twins. Okay, fear and I were born twins. Now I'll give you a little background as to make you understand this concept. Okay, why he says fear and I were born twins. Okay, now what happened was, when you talk about Thomas Hobbes belongs to England. Like Plato and Aristotle belong to Greece, Machiavelli belonged to Italy, Florence, Principality of Florence. Here, basically, Thomas Hobbes belongs to England. All of us know about UK, our colonial masters. All right. So, what happened was, during his birth, that is something around 1588. Okay, there was a threat. There was a threat of attack by Spanish Armada. What is Armada? Armada is nothing but a simple word used for fleet of sheep. Okay, the ships coming together, the fleet of ships together is called as an armada. All right, so there was a threat of Spain invading, okay, or naval force of Spain invading England, and because of that threat, it was a threat. Okay, Thomas Hobbes' mother gave a premature birth to him. All right, so he was a premature baby. So because of that, since the very beginning, like I told you, first impression is the last impression. So what was his impression? Fear is a basis or a basic motive of human nature. See, because his own birth, okay, and whatever he saw throughout his life always showed him a picture of negative view of human nature, always showed that okay, security of life is always getting threatened. All right, man is always going to be afraid of death, man is always afraid of losing something. So because of that, what happened? He started believing that fear is the basic motive of human beings, that anything that man does is basically because of fear. All right, so that's the reason why he says fear and I were born twins. So first thing you have to remember is that is his psychology, which has shaped his entire philosophy that I'm going to be teaching you. All right, second, because of fear and he were born twins, that concept, he creates an absolute state. Remember I told you nature of state, he creates an absolute state. All right, because of this concept of fear that he has. How did this concept of fear come in? Because he was given birth prematurely. Why? Because there was a threat of Spanish armada attacking England. So because of that threat, all right, he was prematurely given birth, and because of that concept he started feeling that okay, listen, fear is an innate motive of human behavior. Every human being, whoever is present, is fearful and always wants security of life because he's fearful of death. So always craves for security. So how will he get security? He says create an absolute state. So he is justifying this concept of fear in creating a state that is an absolute state. All right. So first you remember fear and I were born twins is because of a threat of Spanish armada attacking. What is armada? Fleet, fleet of navy ships. All right. Next, he also witnessed the Civil War of 1642. It was a violent and a bloody revolution, and the security of life wasn't guaranteed. Class, understand the basic concept. When I say the word civil war, okay, civil war basically means internal strife. Okay, when there is an internal problem between organs within the state, okay, it is called as civil war. All right, external is aggression or war between two countries. Civil war is internal within the boundaries of a particular state. All right. So he witnessed the Civil War of 1642. Now, this is not required. Nobody's going to ask you. But like I told you, I'll give a little bit of background because I want you to know the thinkers and his entire psychology very clearly. So what happened in Civil War of 1642? As of now, everybody of us knows that, okay, there is a Queen of England. So they have a constitutional monarchy, the Queen, all right? And plus they have a parliament. Boris Johnson is the prime minister, no? All right. So what happened? Civil war was a conflict between the parliamentarians and the monarchical forces. All right. And that war continued from 1642 onwards. Okay. There were three wars which happened. And currently there is a Queen of England. But now we are talking about Civil War of 1642. So in 1642, there was basically a king called as Charles I. All right. He faced civil war against the parliamentarian forces led by Cromwell. All right. In the second war, Charles I was executed. He was killed. All right. And after that, Cromwell established a republic for 11 years. But remember what I told you during Machiavelli? Machiavelli had made this very clear that he said when you're using force, use force in such a way that you completely eliminate your enemy. Cromwell did not follow that advice. Okay, so what happened was Cromwell executed Charles I, but Charles I's son, Charles II, all right, he came back together. He brought the forces from Scotland and England together and posed a threat to Cromwell. Okay, and in 1660 Charles II again came back to power. Okay, so I'll just again tell you, I think it's become a little confusing. Civil war was basically between parliamentarians led by Cromwell and monarchy led by Charles I. Charles I was executed. All right, he was killed. After he was killed, all right, his son Charles II also posed a threat to Cromwell. and came back to power in 1660. So from 1649, when Charles I was executed, till 1660, Cromwell ruled. So basically, you see within a period of something around 18 years, there were three rulers and two different concepts of rule. One was monarchy, second, under Cromwell, was republican form of government. Okay. But again, it did not survive, came in monarchy. You have to understand, Hobbes belongs to England. In England, even today, monarchy exists just for namesake, but it exists. All right. So it was not possible to just overthrow the monarchy so easily, because you have to understand a particular nation reflects its history. That's what we spoke about when we spoke about the historical approach. That history reflects how the society is going to be. All right. Even Machiavelli said the same thing. Study psychology and history. You will understand the kind of people you're ruling over. So, because of this civil war, Charles I was executed. Cromwell came to power for 11 years, but Cromwell was again overthrown by Charles II. So, monarchy is restored. Okay. So, what happened? Because it was a violent and a bloody revolution, there were wars. There were three proper wars which happened. So, because of this, Thomas Hobbes was already fearful because of his premature birth, because of the threat of Spanish invasion, became more fearful, okay, became more fearful and started realizing that, listen, look at it. Men are constantly fighting. Spain is planning to attack England. Now, civil war, people are fighting in England. The people are fighting amongst themselves. So, what are the people? People are egoistic, selfish, power hungry, and constantly fighting. So, because of these two concepts, okay, the fear of Spanish Armada attacking as well as the civil war, because he witnessed it. He was born in 1588. So, he witnessed the civil war. All right. So, because of this, his human nature turns absolutely pessimistic. And that's the reason why he said he wanted to create a strong state to control anarchy. Anarchy in politics means lawlessness. Okay. So, he wanted to control anarchy. How can anarchy be controlled? His justification is absolute power. Okay. Absolute power. Now, what is absolute sovereign? He calls absolute sovereign Leviathan. So that is the work that we are going to be talking about. His book is called Leviathan. Leviathan basically means a sea monster. Plato was the republic. All right. Aristotle was politics. Machiavelli was the prince. Thomas Hobbes, Leviathan. Leviathan is nothing but an absolute sovereign created by social contract. Okay, created by social contract. So basically, till now you have understood why he says fear and I were born twins. Second, because of the invasion and the threat of invasion of Spanish armadas, plus the civil war, the conflict between the parliamentarians and the monarchy. Okay. So because of this, his conclusion was men or people, whatever you want to call them as, are selfish and power hungry. So absolute sovereignty in form of Leviathan is required. What does Leviathan mean? Leviathan means a sea monster. Okay. I already told you negative view of human nature. Imagine a person who is seen fear constantly. Okay. Seen war constantly. Of course, he's going to have a negative view of human nature. All right. Then he believed that insecurity led to a creation of a strong state. Why insecurity? Because if Thomas Hobbes is also a part of society, if he is fearful, if I, Ankita, was a part of that society, even Ankita is going to be fearful. Any one of you is also, if you are going to be a part of that society, is going to be fearful. So he believed that everybody is fearful. There is no security of life. Okay, there is constant war-like situation, either external aggression or internal strife in form of civil war happening. So there is an insecurity of life. मैं बोलो सो कायदा, kind of a state, so that anarchy, okay, is controlled. So that anarchy is controlled. All right. So he was the first thinker who established the basis of legitimacy of authority of state is the capacity to provide security for life. That's why he wanted a strong state. That he wanted security of life, okay, to be guaranteed. And that's why he wanted a strong state. That's why he wanted to create an absolute sovereign called Leviathan. If, according to Hobbes, if a state is unable to provide security of life to its people, which is its foremost duty, the state loses its legitimacy and should be considered as a failed state. Class, what do you mean by legitimacy? In simple words, legitimacy means acceptance, acceptance of an authority. It can be about a particular regime, it can be about particular laws also. So legitimacy is acceptance, all right, of authority of a particular regime or particular laws. So his basic concept was security of life. See, he's a person who believes fear is the basic motive of man. Okay, so definitely he's fearful, fearful of everything, especially fearful of death. All right. So because of that, he wants a government or a state that can guarantee security of life. That can guarantee security of life. That's why he wants a strong state called Leviathan. Because he believes a state which cannot guarantee a security of life to the people, that it's supposed to be considered as a failed state, because security of life is the basic concept of a state. Class, when I teach you Indian political thought, okay, when I'll teach you Chanakya, Arthashastra, there also you'll come across this concept called as Rakshan and Palan. Rakshan is protection. What is protection? Guaranteeing security of life. All right. And Palan is welfare. So even Indian political thought is also speaking about the same thing. All right. That basically security of life, protection has to be guaranteed by the state. If that guarantee is not given, you have to consider the state as a failed state. You can give an example of Indian political thought here, Rakshan and Palan. Because he's dealing with a complete theory of sovereignty and the methodology that he uses, resolutive and composite method. I'll just stop here for a minute. Class, have you understood what I've taught you till now? Have you understood? Show me a thumbs up or either write it in the chat box. Okay. Till now you have understood. Okay, I'll continue. All right. Now we are coming to a very important concept. So please pay attention. Okay. Now, till now you have understood the concept of his fear because of his threat of Spanish Armada invasion and civil war. Okay. So he wants an absolute state which will guarantee security of life. And he believes any state which cannot guarantee security of life is considered as a failed state. All right. He is considered a modern thinker because he deals with complete theory of sovereignty. Class, what do you mean by sovereignty? Simplistically, in simple words, sovereignty means supremacy or supreme command of the state. Okay, supremacy or supreme command of the state within its own borders. That is the concept of sovereignty. Sovereignty is all powerful within the boundaries. You've seen whatever has been happening in last 2-3 days with international celebrities giving their opinion basically about the farm laws and the farmer agitation. And majority of our Indian celebrities have been using this word sovereignty. All right. So what do you mean by sovereignty? Internally, supremacy and supreme command of law within India. So nobody outside can speak about it. That is the concept of sovereignty. Simplistically speaking, supreme command or supreme will of the state. I've told you, in political theory, state means a country or a nation. Okay, so supreme command or supreme will of the state within its own borders or boundaries is called as sovereignty. He is considered, Thomas Hobbes is considered a modern thinker because he gave a concept of sovereignty. And the methodology he uses is resolutive and composite method. All right. Now, we'll first talk about sovereignty, then I'll come to his methodology. All right. Sovereignty is a modern political concept and denotes state sovereignty. Sovereignty is, I told you, supreme will or supreme command of the state. Bowden defined it as a power of state over its citizens and subjects unrestrained by law. Class, generally sovereignty as a concept is attributed to Bowden. See, I've written here, sovereignty as a concept is attributed to Bowden. All right. So if anybody asks you who came up with the concept of sovereignty, Bowden. But who gave you a complete concept and theory of sovereignty? Okay, legal sovereignty. Then you talk about the thinker that I'm teaching you currently, Thomas Hobbes. That's why he's considered a modern thinker. Okay, now Boden, who created or formulated this concept, okay, of sovereignty, basically defined sovereignty as a power of a state over its citizens and subjects, unrestrained by law. What do you mean by unrestrained? Uncontrolled subjection of the people or citizens or subjects, whatever you want to call it as, by the state. So people, the citizens, the subject are completely subjugated to the power of a state. That's the reason why it is power of a state over its citizens and subjects, unrestrained by law, uncontrolled. So state enjoys absolute power over its citizens and subjects. I told you, it is supremacy or supreme command of a state within its boundaries, within its borders. So citizens and subjects or people living within these boundaries are going to be completely bound by the state law. But, but while Bodin said this, that state, the power of a state over its citizens and subjects is absolute, total, he still believed that the state law, okay, is to some extent limited by the natural law as well as the religious law. Okay, so even if the state law is supreme, it is, according to Bodin, it is still restricted by something called as natural law or a religious law. So because of this concept, all right, we don't consider Bodin to be a person who gives complete theory of sovereignty. That goes to Thomas Hobbes, because Thomas Hobbes said no. Sorry. When you're talking about the concept of sovereignty, Hobbes believed in removing all limitations and proposed absolute sovereignty. So while Bodin gave the concept of sovereignty, the complete theory of sovereignty is given by Thomas Hobbes. All right. What is the difference between both of them? Difference between both of them is that Bodin limited sovereignty to natural law. Sovereignty is supreme command of a state to natural law or divine law or religious law. Thomas Hobbes said nothing doing, nothing of this sorts. Man is a fearful person, all right? Entire time he's either fighting with somebody outside the state or within the state having a civil war. So these kind of people who are constantly quarreling with each other require something like a complete, total, absolute state who will tell them that, okay, listen, this is the what, this is the law I have made, you have to follow it. That's the reason why security of life for Hobbes was important. So he said, nothing doing. State has absolute sovereignty. No natural law, no divine law, nothing restricts it. If a law is made by a state, if a law is made by Leviathan, you have to follow it. Because of this concept of absolute sovereignty, we generally say that Bodin is standing on the doors of modernity, but it was Thomas Hobbes who entered the door. See, I again told you, you have to understand these thinkers are going to reflect the practices, the social, religious practices happening at that point of time. Best example was Machiavelli. Machiavelli saw that, listen, look at it. Italy is divided into 5 principalities fighting with each other, plus threat of France, Germany, Spanish attack continuously happening. So because of this, what happened? He said, listen, politics and religion, politics and ethics, politics and morality have to be separated from each other. Keep politics separate. All right. Once politics was separated from religion and everything, that's the same build up on which, the same foundation on which Thomas Hobbes also goes ahead and says, right, that is what Machiavelli said. Politics has to be completely separated from religion, ethics, morality, natural law, divine law, etc. When you're talking about the power of a state, when you're talking about politics, only concentrate on politics. It cannot be subjected or cannot be subjugated to anything called as natural law or divine law. So even if Bodin came up with the concept of sovereignty, okay, the concept of absolute sovereignty was given by Thomas Hobbes, who said unparalleled power is given to state. Nobody can question the power of a state, okay, over its citizens. no restraints like morality, ethics, politics, what Machiavelli spoke about, as well as no divine law, no natural law, no religious law that Borden speaks about can limit the supreme command of a state. So because Hobbes created the concept and gave the concept of absolute sovereignty, he's called as a modern thinker. All right. This is a question generally asked. Borden is standing on the doors of modernity, but it was Hobbes who entered it. You have to say the same thing. Borden gave the concept of sovereignty, but the concept of absolute sovereignty was given by Hobbes, because Hobbes, unlike Borden, did not believe in limiting the state law to natural law or divine law. So, because of this concept of absolute sovereignty, it is said that Borden is standing on the doors of modernity, but it was Hobbes who entered it. All right. Class, have you understood the concept of absolute sovereignty and why he's called a modern thinker from sovereignty point of view? You want me to repeat? If you want me to repeat, be frank. I'll repeat it 10 times until the time you understand it. I want your concepts to be clear. Have you understood? Okay. Okay. Akansha, I'll be teaching you about natural law. Patience, patience. I'll come to natural law. Don't worry about it. All right? Okay. Next is methodology. Now, what is the methodology? The methodology that he uses, okay, also makes Thomas Hobbes a modern thinker. Resolutive composite method is what he uses. So he has used basically the concept of scientific thinking, scientific methods, okay? He's used scientific methods to apply it to the basic concept of human behavior. Remember the concept of behavioralism I taught you? In contemporary approach, the first approach to study human behavior, all right, bring political science in close contact to social sciences and use scientific methods to bring about more generalized theories. Behavioralism, okay, is something that you're going to be talking about when you talk about Thomas Hobbes. But behavioralism came only after Second World War. So you can say that basically Thomas Hobbes was the predecessor to the concept of behavioralism because of his methodology. Okay, he's applying scientific and geometrical concepts to the methodology used to identify and to make a general theory of politics. In his methodology, he's using both Descartes, okay, as well as Galileo, okay, and then he comes up with his theory called as resolutive compositive method. I'm going to explain it to you in the simplest concept, okay. Now, Descartes had actually believed that, okay, listen, when you look at a particular phenomena, okay, it's very difficult to just study an entire phenomena on its own. So what do? Take a complex phenomena, break it down into smaller parts, okay. Take a complex phenomena, break it into smaller parts, okay. Now, all these smaller parts, use cause and effect with regards to each one of them. Establish cause and effect, that if this is done, this will be the effect. So I'm taking a complex phenomena, breaking it into smaller parts, okay. Then the smaller parts that I have divided the complex phenomena into, I'm establishing a cause and effect relationship behind it, okay. And on basis of that, I explain my theory and form generalizations. Okay, now I'm going to explain to you in concept of how Thomas Hobbes looked at this concept. So what is a complex phenomena that Thomas Hobbes took? English society. Okay, the complex phenomena that Thomas Hobbes looks at is the English society. Now let's divide the English society. There is monarchy, there are people, there is a church, etc. All right. In that, he takes one small part of a complex phenomena called English society, that is the people, the people who constitute UK at that point of time. All right. So now basically he's taking those people. So one person. So a complex phenomena called English society divided into smaller constituent parts to study them independently. One independent part is individual. Okay. So Thomas Hobbes concentrates on individual. He says now every individual, being a human being, has something called as a brain, mind. All right. In the mind, okay, there is something called as particles, because mind is a matter is made up of particles which are constantly in state of motion. All right, try to sit for meditation for 2 minutes, your mind will roam into all the directions. The same concept that Thomas Hobbes is saying, that listen, in a complex concept called English society, there is one small constituent part called as individual. Individual is governed by by mind. Okay, mind. In the mind there are certain particles which are constantly in state of motion. Okay, they're constantly in state of motion. These particles and their motion basically decides the liking and aversion in a person. For simple example, if I tell you ki, you have to run for 3 kilometers, okay, you'll be like, god no, please no. What is your first reaction? The people who said no, that is aversion. The particles are running away from the stimuli, from external stimuli of running. Okay, so you say no because you consider running as a pain, so you try to run away from it. There may be some people who are fitness enthusiasts amongst you, will be like, oh wow, running, why not, let's go. That is basically particles in that person's brains going towards the stimuli. Okay, because they look at running as, wow, release of endorphins, wow, I'll feel energetic, wow, I'll be fit. So they are liking it. Okay, they are liking it. In each and every person there is this something called as aversion, something called as liking. They are basically the particles in your brains, okay, or particle in your mind. Going towards something creates a liking for it, going against it creates an aversion. So entire man's life depends upon this concept of pleasure and pain. Okay, whatever gives you pleasure you do, whatever does not give you pleasure or whatever gives you pain you avoid. So I'll again explain to you what is resolutive composite methods. Resolute composite method is nothing but taking a phenomena, breaking it into smaller parts so that you can study. Okay, so for example, from Thomas Hobbes' point of view, I am taking the concept of individual. Individual is a small composition or a small composite part of a complex phenomena called United Kingdom society or Britain society or English society. All right, this individual is governed by mind. Okay, in mind, according to Galileo, I told you Descartes and Galileo together come together to influence Thomas Hobbes. So Descartes came up this concept of complex phenomena to be divided into parts to study cause and effect. So I'm using Galileo and Descartes and explaining this concept to you. So basically a complex English society is divided into smaller parts for easier study. Thomas Hobbes focuses only on the person or human being. Thomas Hobbes then says, see, human being has a mind. It is the mind which governs human being. All right. Now, because this mind governs human beings, in mind there are certain particles, okay, which are constantly in motion. They either go towards something or they go opposite, in the opposite direction. When those particles in the mind go in particular direction, it means you like something. When they go in an opposite direction, it means you hate something or you have an aversion for it. Simple example I gave you, people who love running, particles in the brain will go towards running. Okay, because you will think of it as pleasure. People who do not like physical exercise, the particles in your brain will go in the opposite direction, create an aversion. So what will you think? 3 kilometers running, so much of pain. So see, whatever is giving you pain, you try to avoid it. Whatever gives you pleasure, you go and do it. Okay, this is the simple concept of your resolutive composite method. Have you understood resolutive composite method? Simplistically, you have to understand it is pain and pleasure. What gives you pain, you do. What gives you pain, you avoid. What gives you pleasure, you continue doing it. Okay, I'll continue then. Okay, class, nobody's going to ask you this in detail. This is only for your knowledge, but you have to write it. Okay, you have to write it. That basically, if they ever ask you that he's a mod, why is he considered a modern thinker? Because of concept of sovereignty. This entire explanation here and the methodology, resolutive composite method. You don't have to go into details of it. All right. This is only for your understanding that I spoke about it. Now we are entering exactly what Thomas Hobbes thinks. All right. So, like I told you, what is social contract? Human nature, state of nature, nature of state, terms of contract, character of sovereignty. Now we'll get into the complete concept of Thomas Hobbes. So, I have already told you Thomas Hobbes' basic concept was fear. Okay, that man fears. The fear is his basic motive. So now he's first talking about human nature. Okay, because one each and every human being is going to reflect a society. That society will decide what kind of state, what kind of authority of state that a social contract should come up with. So this is the basis, okay, the basic foundation of his theory of social contract. So according to Thomas Hobbes, human nature was basically influenced by the events of his life, and it was very pessimistic. All right. He believed that humans are egotistical, greedy, selfish by nature, and are governed by self-interest. They are not affected by reason, but only by appetites, desires, and passions. Okay. Reason and passions are both present in a human being. Now I'll explain to you what it means. First, by events of his life, meaning first you to talk about his premature birth because of the fear of Spanish armadas, and second, civil war that he witnessed himself in his lifetime, which led to him having a very pessimistic view of human nature. Now, because of this pessimistic view of human nature, what happened? What is his belief in human nature? He says humans, they are egoistic, greedy, selfish by nature, governed by only self interest. Okay, they are not affected by reason but by only appetite, desires, and passions. See, I gave you the concept, no, resolutive composite methods, that any matter is made up of particles which are constantly in state of motions. If they like something, the particles move in that direction. If they don't like something, the particles move in an opposite direction, thus creating liking and aversion. Okay, so the motion of the particles will tell you if they move in the direction of something, that means you like it. If there is a motion of particles in an opposite direction to external stimuli, there is an aversion. So whatever gives you or whatever gives you pleasure, particles are going to move in favor of that, in that direction. Okay, so man is pleasure seeking. Okay, and second, wherever the particles move in an opposite direction of something, there is an aversion created. Why is that aversion? Because that something is going to give you, that external stimuli is something going to give you pain. So whatever is pleasure is acceptable to human beings. Whatever is going to give you pain is going to be avoided by human beings. So because of that, your Thomas Hobbes says that, listen, man is greedy and selfish by nature because he only wants to go behind things which give him pleasure. He wants to avoid pain. Just go behind everything that gives him pleasure. So they are not affected by reason, but only by appetite, desires, and passions. Now, what is appetite, desires, and passions? The particles in your brain acting to the external stimuli. Appetite, if I give you an ice cream and if I give you karele ka juice, what will you prefer? Definitely, majority of you will prefer ice cream. So, appetite creates your pleasure concept. Desires, okay? If I give you $1,000,000, okay, and I give you something like running for 3 kilometers, what will you prefer? $1,000,000, because everybody desires luxurious life. Passions, okay? If I tell you in passion, good passions, okay, basically, if I tell you, okay, so India England match is going on, you would definitely want India to win. That passion is something because cricket gives you pleasure. So that is your passion. In some, between some of you, some people may not like cricket, it creates an aversion, so you will move away from cricket. All right, so basically it is your appetites, desires, and passions which govern you. Okay, these are the ones which give you pleasure, and because of that, people are generally a servant to their concept of pleasure because it is going to give you happiness. All right, so even if according to Thomas Hobbes, man has reasons, Okay, man has reason, but reason is passive, passion is active, because man is constantly pleasure seeking. He only wants ice creams, he only wants a luxurious life, he only wants power. So basically, in passion is always going to be active, reason is always going to be inactive, okay, or passive. Now, why reason? Because we call human beings a thinking animal. We are animals, but we are thinking animals because we have brain. And because we have brain, we can think about cause and effect. Okay, so this cause and effect concept is called as reason, which is present in each one of us. Okay, but that reason, okay, which separates us from animals, is also something that is basically reduced by your passion, subordinate by passion, because man is more passionate. Freud's entire theory of eds, okay, is basically on the concept of passion. All right, your eds, your instincts are your passion. Okay, so reason is your super ego, while EDs or instincts are your passion. What is this? Is same thing what even Freud spoke about in psychology. Thomas Hobbes is speaking in political science. So man has reasons which is passive and is governed generally by passions which are active. So he seeks pleasure over pain. All right. Fear and self preservation guide him. I told you, he believes man is only fearful. He is fearful. So, self preservation and security of life is the most important concept for a man. Humans have desire for power, which only ceases in death. Because of the greed for power, there is a war of everyone against the others. Class, I put this in inverted commas. This has to come. This inverted comma text has to come in your answer. So what happens? Because I desire power, Akansha desires power, Siddesh desires power. What will happen if three of us are in the same room? Three of us will want to dominate. We will want to be the numero uno. So what will happen? Me, Akansha, Siddesh will be constantly fighting with each other because we want power. And power, only one person can wield power. Sovereignty, no. I taught you the concept of sovereignty, supreme command, one power. All right. So either Akansha can be powerful, Siddesh can be powerful, or I will be powerful. We are all equal. Three of us are equal in power, but but only one person can rule. So we three will be constantly fighting because I will never accept subjugation to either Akansha or Siddesh. Neither will they accept subjugation to the other two. All right. So because of this, what happens? We are constantly fighting with each other. Even if I establish my power, both of them will try to overhaul my power and take power. So because of this, what happens? There is a war of everyone against others. It's a constant warfare. I get power, somebody else gets jealous, he kills me, takes power. That person is killed by somebody else, the power is shifted. So because of this, people are constantly in war with each other. It is a situation of war of everyone against the others. Plus, man is individualistic as he is incapable of thinking about other man. Okay, he lacks social instincts. Human relationships are based on mutual hostility and suspicion. Common sense. All of us want power. All of us fear death. Okay, so once I have power, why do I crave for power? Because it is going to give me security of life. Okay, it's going to be giving me security of life. It's going to rid me of the fear I have always had. So once I have power, I have security of life. So at least for that 1 millisecond, I can be sure I'm going to be alive. All right. So because of this such a security dilemma, what happens? Everybody constantly keeps on seeking power because each and every man becomes individualistic. Sar salamat to pagdi pachas. If I am alive, then everything else matters. If I'm dead, nothing else matters. Okay, so because of that, man is individualistic. I should be alive. I don't care if anybody else is alive or no, I should remain alive. So because of this individualistic nature, what happens? He constantly seeks power to get security of life. Okay, and because of this constant craving for power and security of life, human relationships are always based on mutual hostility and suspicion. Because I see, even if I have power, I will always be unsure because somebody else can come and take over my power and kill me. Okay. In Machiavelli also, all right, if you remember Machiavelli in statecraft, what was Machiavelli's advice to the prince? Prince, even if you have power, you need advisors. Always keep an eye on your advisors, keep an eye on the nobility. Okay, because they also will have political ambitions and they can kill you. Okay, and I've given you an example of Julius Caesar. All right, so the same concept. All right, that human relationships are always based on mutual hostility and suspicion. For Thomas Hobbes, this was most true because he felt man is craving power because he wants to get rid of fear and wants security of life. And because of this craving for security of life, man is individualistic and does not trust anybody else but only himself. So he only believes in self preservation and security of life. Now comes, so each and every man is what Thomas Hobbes says is fearful, egotistical, selfish, power hungry, and looking for security of his own life. So by wielding power, he feels I can be secured of my life at least for that point of time. All right, because nature has made each one of us equal. Nature has made each one of us equal. All right. So now imagine if people like you and me, each one of us is fearful, each one of us is negative, each one of us is pessimistic, each one of us is power hungry, what is the kind of society we are going to be living in? Okay, now when you talk about society here, we cannot use the word society in Thomas Hobbes, we have to use the word state of nature, because according to Thomas Hobbes, the entire state of nature is pre-societal and pre-political. There was no concept of society. What is society? Living together peacefully. That concept was not there because they were constantly fighting with each other. So society was not there, state was also not there. Okay, so that's the reason why his state of nature is, see what I've written here, is pre-political but also pre-social. There is no concept of society, no concept of living peacefully with each other. No. Okay, so his state of nature is pre-political as well as pre-social. Okay, he draws or he portrays a very gloomy and a sordid the picture of state of nature. Sordid meaning dirty, poor picture of state of nature. You can imagine if human beings are constantly fighting, according to Plato's concept of state is individual writ large, each and every individual constantly fighting, of course, state of nature is going to be gloomy and sordid. There's going to be constant warfare. Okay. State of nature here is used by Thomas Hobbes to denote how men survived without a civil law and political control. Civil law and political control comes only when there is a political and a social authority. That's why we're using the word civil here. Okay. So, in absence of civil law, in absence of political control, man is ruled by natural rights. Akansha, now I'll answer your question. What is natural law? Natural law is a law which is already present, prevalent in the nature, all right, which man uses his reason. Man uses his reason to identify. See, we've spoken about reason here, that man has reason, but it is passive, okay, and passions are active. So, natural law is a law which is prevalent already, all right, and which a man identifies because of the reason. Reason is your mind power, the concept to identify something, okay, cause and effect relationship establishment is because of reasons. So this natural law is prevalent. Man recognizes that natural law, which gives him natural rights. Okay, which gives him natural rights. Class, I am using the word natural law, natural rights, because there is no state, there is no society. So there cannot be a civil law, there cannot be a positive law. To simplistically put, see, laws can be divided into 3 to 4 concepts. The first law is religious law, which Borden spoke about. What is religious law? Religious law is a one which comes from religious scriptures. Okay, so Bible, Bhagavad Gita, Quran. If the state is functioning according to religious law, it is called as religious law. All right. So law governed by religion is religious law. Second concept is natural law. Okay. Natural law is basically neither basically civil law. So civil law, or a what you can call as legal law, is a law, or a positive law is a law which is made by a state. Any law which is made by a state or by a government or a particular regime is called as your positive law or civil law. All right. If it is not made by a state, it is a natural law. It is a natural law. All right. Then there is something called as customary law also, that depends upon customs and conventions. For example, United Kingdom that we're talking about, okay, does not have a written constitution. So it depends upon customs and conventions. All right. So those laws are again coming from a document. All right. So they are basically different from natural laws. Natural laws are not scripted, they are not written down anywhere, and they do not have state or regime or governmental enforcement, is not possible. That's why they are called as natural. These natural laws and natural rights human beings can understand only through the concept of reason, through the concept of human conscience, through reason and through your human conscience. Okay, that you can identify natural law and natural rights. While religious laws come from religious scriptures, customary law comes from customs, while your positive law or a civil law comes from a state, comes from a state. Natural law is one present in the nature, which a man can identify because of your concept of reason, as well as the most important concept, that it is the one which gives you natural rights. Because man is a thinking animal, he has reasons, he can identify natural laws and the subsequent natural rights, but these laws cannot be enforced. These laws cannot be enforced because there is no government backing them, there is no state backing them. That's why they are called as natural laws and natural rights. Okay. Generally, Thomas Hobbes believed that there were natural rights, and according to Thomas Hobbes, there were 19 natural rights which were enjoyed by the people in state of nature. There were 19 rights which were enjoyed by people in state of nature. Out of these, only three you have to remember. Okay? Out of the three natural rights. Now, I've told you, natural rights are not enforced because they do not have a backing of a state. Natural rights and natural law depends upon your conscience as well as on your reason, mind. Okay, so on basis of your mind, reason and your conscience, basically Thomas Hobbes believed that there were natural rights, 19 of them, which were enjoyed by people naturally in state of nature. Out of those, three natural rights were most important. First was to seek peace and to follow it. Second was abandon the natural right to things. Third, individual must honor the contract they have entered into. So now why peace? Because there's constant warfare going on because of the human nature. Why abandon natural rights? Because if you don't give something, you're not going to get something. Give and take. Everything is give and take in life. Okay, there are no free lunches. So if the state has to make certain laws, you have to give your naturally ordained law, the one which you have obtained through your reasons, or one which you have found through your inner conscience. You have to give it away. You have to abandon it so that the law made by the state can be accepted by you. All right. And next, individual must honor the contract, the agreement that they have entered into. All right. So basically, state of nature is pre-political and pre-social. There is no concept of civil law, government, state, society, nothing. Okay. People like you and me are living in jungle. Okay. Where might is right. We are constantly fighting with each other. All right. So because we are constantly fighting with each other, there is no industry, no systematic means of production, as men lived close to nature. Okay. Hunting, food gathering, that kind of life. Okay. Their behavior was governed by inner impulse, passion, inner impulse, or intuition, as Sigmund Freud talks about. There is no law, no justice, no rights, or no wrong, as all of this exists. Justice and injustice exists or relates to a man in society, not in solitude. See, man will never want to remain in family, according to Thomas Hobbes. Man will always prefer living alone, because tomorrow any person from my family also can kill me in my sleep. Okay, because man is so fearful. Man is so fearful that man prefers to live in solitude. And when you're in solitude, there is nothing called as justice or injustice. Justice and injustice comes when it is collective, when it is a society, not when you're alone. If you're alone in a room, you cannot have the concept of justice or injustice. Justice or injustice comes only when there are two people. Okay, so basically man believes in living a solitary life, okay, alone, because the moment somebody else comes in close contact with a man, what will happen? Their selfish interest will contradict each other. Both will be fearful of each other because of mutual hostility and suspicion, because both of them are powerful and nobody knows who will get killed. So because of that, man avoids coming in contact with people. That's why he believes in solitude. So basically, because of constant warfare and ceaseless struggle, life of a man is, in inverted commas, these are the words you have to use in your answer. Life of a man is solitary because he wants to stay alone. He doesn't want to come in contact with people because anybody can come and kill him. Poor, because he's constantly fearful, constantly power seeking. He has no time to go for agriculture or to set up industry. So because of that, he remains poor. It is nasty. Why nasty? Constant mutual hostility, constant suspicion, okay, leads to nasty kind of life. Brutish. Brutish because we are constantly fighting with each other. We do not respect each other. We are constantly only looking at each other as competitors. So because of that, anytime a fight can break out and anytime anybody can be killed. So because of that, it is brutish. And short also, because I can be killed any moment. I do not have the guarantee of life. I do not have the security of life. That's why my life is solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. And every man is an enemy to every man. I told you it's a war of each man against the others. So because of that, it is a solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, short life wherein every man is an enemy to every man, because both men have passion as well as reasons. But passion of fear, passion, that is your concept for power hungriness, is more dominant than reason. All right. So each and every man wants power over the others for his own pleasures, as Hobbes believes in natural equality of man. Hobbes believed in equality of man. All right, what is equality of man? That each man has equal ability, each man has equal hope of achieving the end that he desires. You, me, each one of us is equal. Now, because we are equal, okay, we can get whatever the other man gets. Okay, generally we believe that a person who's more wittier should have higher position, like philosopher king. That's the basic concept of philosopher king. He has reason dominating, becomes a philosopher king. Artisan class has appetite, so become the artisan class. Okay, the three concepts of souls from Plato. Complete antithesis is Hobbes. Hobbes says nothing doing. Each and every man is equal. Okay, forget reason, appetite, or courage dominating. Each and every man is equal in ability and equal in hope of attending the end that he wants. So what happens? Each one of us is equal. Nobody is higher, nobody is lower. And because of this equality, what happens? Nobody is ready to accept somebody else as superior to himself, because nature has made us equal. Okay, nature has made us equal. So because nature has made us equal, I feel I should have power. So this feels, okay, nature has made me equal to Ankita, so even I deserve power. All right. Asif feels, why only Ankita and Siddesh should have power? Even I am equal, even I should have power. All right. So what happens in this situation? Nobody is ready to accept that I am lesser to somebody else. Nobody is ready to take a step back and say, okay, let's Siddesh rule or let's Asif rule. All right. No, because I am individualistic. I am selfish. I am power hungry. I am governed by my passion, not by reason. If I was reasonable, I would say, okay, Asif, you rule for some time, you rule for 6 months, then we'll pass over the rule to Siddesh. Siddesh will rule for 6 months, then that 6 months I will rule. This reason is not available. Okay, we don't talk about reason because reason is passive. What is active is passion. In passion, neither of us is ready to give up power, because I say I am equal, Asif says I am equal, Siddesh says I am equal. So because of this, what happens? Because of this natural equality of man, both equal physical and mental powers, nobody can overpower each other. Okay, so constant fear exists and total insecurity persists. So because of this, what happens? Might is right. Me and Siddesh are fighting. Then me and Siddesh is defeated. I am victorious. Then me and Asif fight. If Asif defeats me, Asif becomes victorious. So what happens? Power keeps on changing hands. And how does it keep on changing hands? Through fighting and through killing each other. So what is it? It is might is right. Survival of the fittest. Whoever is more powerful will survive. Okay, law of jungle prevails. What is the law of jungle? Tiger and lion are considered to be more powerful, courageous, all right, because they are more powerful compared to a fox. That is the law of jungle. So if you're more powerful, if you're more mighty, you will survive. All right. So because of this might is right and law of jungle, there is always a fear of death, and death meaning violent death. Because if I am powerful, so are the other people, and anybody can come and kill me. Okay, overpower me and kill me. So because of that, because of it, fear of death and violent death is always prevalent. So, because of this entire concept, the man's life is solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. And every man is an enemy to every man, because reason is passive, passion are active. So there is no morality, consciousness of duty or obligation in state of nature. See, all of this, morality is again natural, okay? But consciousness of duty and obligation only comes when you have a government. When government gives you certain rights, then there are certain obligations. Concept of obligations and duties cannot come when there is no government to enforce it. So there is no consciousness of duty or obligation in state of nature, okay? Because it can be only possible when there is an establishment of law and government according to Hobbes. Natural rights are natural power of men used to oppress others. Natural liberty is a source of constant conflict and subsequent anarchy. What are natural rights? I told you, natural rights, natural law, okay, natural liberty. All the concepts that are considered to be natural are basically, there is no enforceability. There is no authority that can enforce it. That's why they are natural. All right. But then if they are natural and there is no one to enforce it, all right, then because of that, it will always lead to constant warfare, because there is nothing, no concept of right and wrong. Okay. And everybody's morality is basically going to be submerged or superseded by your passion for power. So even if morality and reason according to Hobbes exist, okay, which make you understand that everybody has natural rights, natural law, and natural liberty, still that morality and reason is passive to your passion for power. So because of this, all right, what will happen is there's going to be a security dilemma, there's going to be a trust deficit. People will be constantly fighting, because anything which is natural, okay, nobody respects it. Nobody respects it. Okay, nobody respects it, so nobody even follows it. If there is natural liberty, natural law, natural right, their what you can say, believing in them as well as their implementation depends upon morality and reason of a person, which is not a dominant force. Okay, which is not a dominant force in human beings according to Hobbes only. Okay, passions are more dominant. So because of this, natural liberty, natural law are not respected. It only leads to anarchy. Natural law, natural liberty, natural equality, okay, natural ability only leads to constant anarchy, because each one of us is equal. Plus, there is no enforcement. There is no punishment for breaching natural rights. Okay. Plus, you do not have any natural duties, because there is no state to tell you that these are the rights I'm giving you, these are the duties you have to follow. There is no state, there is no enforcement. Everything is natural. So that following of anything which is natural depends upon morality and reason, which is not very powerful, okay, in human beings, which is not very active in human beings. So because of that, there is constant anarchy. And to replace this constant anarchy and the concept of natural law, natural rights, natural liberty, and to remove the security dilemma and trust deficit, Hobbes says people like you, the ones who are constantly fighting, passionate people, power hungry people, not believing in natural law, you deserve a Leviathan. You deserve an absolute sovereign who will say, get up, you have to get up. Who says sit, you have to sit. So, understood why he wants to create an absolute sovereign? Because he believes, see, natural abilities, natural rights, natural laws, okay, natural equality that was given to man. What did it lead to? It led to only anarchy. What is anarchy in political science? Lawlessness. So man could not respect what was given to him freely. Okay. And because you cannot respect whatever was given to you freely by nature, bountiful by nature, now you have to be governed by an absolute sovereign who will decide for you what laws you have to follow, what rights you have to follow, what you have to do. And you have to obey him, because anything that is natural, anything that is free is not respected by people. Natural law was not respected, natural rights were not respected, natural equality was not respected by people. Because of their passions, they led to constant fighting with each other, led to subsequent anarchy. So natural is not respected by people according to Hobbes. So such people only deserve absolute sovereignty. Deserve absolute sovereignty. So man has only two options: either absolute anarchy, governed, which is governed by natural law, keep on fighting, okay, whatever the situation is, let it continue, or establish an absolute authority. Man has only two options. Okay, only two options: either absolute anarchy or absolute authority. Now from that man's point of view, from whatever the Hobbes is talking about, imagine a man who is selfish, who is driven by passion, who is driven by pleasure. Whatever gives him pleasure, okay, he runs towards it. Whatever gives him pains, he avoids it. That kind of man, will he prefer absolute anarchy or will he prefer absolute authority? Anarchy is one wherein anybody can be killed anytime, no security of life. You can be killed any moment. So that man, okay, pleasure seeking man will want to enjoy a peaceful life. He will want a security of life. He will want to enjoy his life, not live in constant fear that tomorrow he'll be alive or no. So that man will finally use that passive reason, that passive morality, okay, and finally conclude that, listen, absolute anarchy is only giving me play pain. So let's go for an absolute authority. Absolute authority. So all my rights and powers and governing powers are given to an Leviathan who will make rules for me. My life is going to be peaceful. My life is going to be peaceful. Why peaceful? At least I will have security of life. At least I'll know I'll not lead to a violent death. Okay, so at least I can live my life. So again, I'll repeat in short. Basically, natural law, natural rights, natural abilities, natural equality, according to Hobbes, only led man to consecutive and consequent anarchy. So he said these people do not deserve anything natural or anything that nature gives them. They require something called as an absolute authority. Absolute authority is basically Leviathan, who will make laws for them, and these people will have to follow them, because anything natural given to these people only led to lawlessness. So the option for the people is only two: either live the way you are living and die, or choose absolute authority of a Leviathan. Okay, use that small passive reason and choose an absolute authority called Leviathan. Give him all your rights to govern, and he will make your life peaceful. At least that Leviathan will guarantee you security of life. So finally, that small reason clicks. Okay, passions are set aside by man. That small reason says, boss, Sar salamat to pagdi pachas. If you're alive, then comes all the pleasures that you can enjoy. So for self-preservation, let us come together and enter into a contract to create a state or an sovereign. So what happens? Natural law leads to anarchy. So only two options: either absolute anarchy continues or absolute authority is to be established. So finally, that small reason in man tells man that, listen, self preservation is important. living is more important. All right. And if you want to live, then you have to choose a contract to create a sovereign. And so finally the reason clicks. All right. And finally the man enters or agrees to enter the social contract. What is social contract? I told you, a mutual agreement. Class, have you understood till now? Akansha, have I told you and explained to you what is natural law? Anything which requires your conscience or reason to identify is natural, which is not backed by the authority of a state, which is not enforceable, all right, is basically your natural law. Class, have you understood the human nature? Class, please write or at the show me a thumbs up. Okay. Have you understood human nature? Have you understood state of nature? His human nature is very similar to Machiavelli. All right, very similar to Machiavelli. Okay, I'll continue then. Okay, so human nature decided the state of nature because of the constant anarchy that was present. Finally that reason clicks in the man, and man says, bas bhai, I cannot go through this situation again and again. I cannot keep on constantly fighting with each other. All right, living is more important. Security of life, right to life, self preservation is more important. So finally I want a good life. I want to live a peaceful life. And how will I get a peaceful life? By entering into a social contract. So Hobbes' social contract is a single contract. Remember, Hobbes' social contract is a single contract because through a single contract, men are creating both society as well as polity. Because I told you the state of nature is pre-political as well as pre-social. Concept of cohesive living, living together peacefully in a society does not exist. So to create a society and to maintain law and order, a political authority called Leviathan is required. So that's the reason why social contract of Hobbes is a single contract. Through a single contract, he creates society and polity. He creates together a society as well as polity. So it's a single contract. All right. Reason guides man to enter the contract. I've already told you this. The contract is of each man with each man. So, for example, under Hobbes, it is that society, English society. In English society, okay, hypothetically, I told you, social contract, state of nature never happened. Social contract never happened. It is hypothetical, okay, make believe, okay, it is a make believe world. So, there is a single contract which creates society and state together. All right, so it is a single contract. This is to be remembered. It's a single contract. That's why I'm reminding you constantly and revising it constantly. Okay, reason has guided man to enter into a contract, and this contract is of each man with each man. Whoever enters the contract creates a contract between each other. Each man gives his right to govern himself as others do the same. So it's a single contract creating society and state simultaneously. Reason is the one which guides person to enter into a contract because everybody wants security of life. Next, the contract is of each man with each man. Whoever comes and enters into that agreement, each one of it is bound by that agreement. So the contract is of each man with each man. Okay. Now, what is this contract? Each man gives up his right to govern himself, and others also do the same thing. So, through the single contract, I cannot govern because if I govern and create a state to govern, there are two sovereigns. Cannot happen. Sovereign has to be only one. Okay. So, because of that, if I am through a contract creating an absolute sovereign, I have to give away all my rights, including right to govern myself is given to the sovereign. So I am surrendering all my rights through a contract. Okay. So by surrendering all the rights to a contract, each one of us is guaranteed basic equality. Remember, contract is of each person with each person. All right. So I am giving up my right to govern myself. Each one of the person who's entering a contract is giving his personal right to govern himself. So now none of the people who have entered the social contract enjoy a right to govern themselves. That right has been forfeited through a contract. Okay. And that is given to the sovereign. That right, okay, to govern is given to the sovereign. Okay, so contract is amongst individuals and the power is transferred to a third party called a sovereign. Okay, sovereign is not a part of contract. Who are the part of contract? People like you and me who entered the contract, who gave up our personal basic rights to govern ourselves, are part of contract. Sovereign is a third party, is a third party. Contract can be between two parties. Okay, so you and me are giving up the powers, we are giving up our own rights. Okay, and giving up our own rights, we are creating a third person called as Leviathan. Okay, third person called as Leviathan. Now, so this third party is not a party to contract. He is not bound by contract. He is above the contract. Contract only governs you and me. It doesn't govern the third party created by contract. I'm repeating again. Okay. Contract is of each man with each man. Each man gives up his personal right to govern himself, and others do the same too. By consenting to the rules of the contract, all individuals are guaranteed basic equality. So no one has extra or different rights, and same taxes are going to be imposed on you. Contract is amongst individuals, and each and every individual transfers his power to a third party called Leviathan. Why a third party? Simple reasoning. You and me living together, what happened? We created a chaos. We created a chaos and state of nature because all of us were dominated by our passions. Okay, power hungriness. So we created a situation of complete anarchy, constant warfare. It was basically, to some extent, I even called it a concept of jungle raj, jungle rule, rule of the jungle. Might is right happened. So because of that, Hobbes says, boss, not trusting any one of you, surrender all your rights. Now, each and every man, human nature is not going to change. It's going to remain the same even after entering the contract. Okay. So finally, Thomas Hobbes says, boss, you people are constantly fighting, all right? And you are the people cannot be trusted. Any one of you cannot be trusted. So the social contract through whom you're creating a sovereign has to be somebody who's not a part of you. He's not a part of you. He has to be some third person. And that particular third person will have complete power over you. That third person will have complete power over you because you people are incapable. You people are incapable of ruling over yourselves. You created a state of anarchy, all right, when you had natural rights. So even in nature, you could not remain happy. So because of that, now I have to put you under the authority of somebody who will direct, who will execute each and every laws for you, and you have to obey them. So that laws cannot be governed by either me, Asif, or Siddesh, because we'll make laws to suit us. Okay? Because we are selfish people, according to Thomas Hobbes. So Thomas Hobbes says nothing doing. I'm not giving any one of you any rights. You come together, create a social contract, give away all your rights to a third person. That third person is outside the scope of your contract. He is not bound by any contract. Okay, you have created this third person out of your contract. That's why that third person is called a monster. He's not a human being. It's a monster. Leviathan means a sea monster. Have you understood this part? Class, have you understood this part? That sovereign is not a party to the contract. That's why it's a Leviathan. That's why it is a third person. Understood? Okay. So will you remember it's a single contract? It's a contract of each person to each person. And because of the selfishness and the chaos that man created in the natural society or natural state or state of nature, Thomas Hobbes says nothing doing. Give all away, give all your rights to a third person. That third person is your Leviathan. Okay, so the men are limited by contract because they are party. Sovereign isn't a party to contract. Social contract brings sovereign into existence who enjoys absolute authority. All men in the society, apart from sovereign himself, became his subjects. Who become his subjects? All the people, all of us become his subjects, and he is the third party. He governs. He is not bound by any limitations of a contract, etc. No, he is absolute sovereign. That's why Leviathan, being an absolute sovereign, not bound by this social contract, is what makes Thomas Hobbes a modern thinker. Because he understood with absolute sovereignty that Leviathan is going to enjoy absolute powers. Okay? Who are going to be subjected to his power? All the people who gave away their rights are going to be his subjects. And who's going to be the ruler? Who's going to be the sovereign? Leviathan, a third person. Okay? A third person. He is above the contracts. He's not bound by the terms of contracts. And he is above all the people who entered into the social contract. So now this absolute sovereign called Leviathan is going to govern your life. He's going to govern your life with absolute authority over your life. Okay? He is above all the laws. He is above all the contracts. He is above all the terms of agreements. He is above everybody. He has absolute power. All right? All natural rights, remember 19 natural rights I spoke about, are surrendered to the sovereign by the people. Okay, authority of the state cannot be challenged and it has coercive powers to punish the lawbreakers. Contract is perpetual and irrevocable. This perpetual and irrevocable contract is also a major criticism, all right, of social contract theory. I'll be dealing with criticism after I finish teaching you Locke. But remember, this contract is perpetual. What do you mean by perpetual? We entered, our future generations are also bound by this contract, according to Thomas Hobbes. Their future generations is also bound by the same social contract. That's why it is perpetual. Why? Because the state has to remain, no? The sovereign has to continue. Otherwise, we'll again go back to anarchy. So that's why this social contract entered by people within themselves and created a third person called as Leviathan, okay, is perpetual and it is irrevocable. You cannot revoke it. Once it is made, it is done. Okay, it is perpetual and it is irrevocable. Thomas Hobbes himself preferred monarchy to aristocracy and democracy, as sovereign was a source of law and interpreter of law too. Class, why monarchy? Remember when I was telling you classifications, okay? Under Aristotle, monarchy is rule of one. Absolute sovereign, that basically Thomas Hobbes is so obsessed about, has to be only one person, generally one person, who is going to be the source of law, and he is only going to be an interpreter of law. Because what is sovereign? Sovereign is something or someone who has supremacy, who has supreme command. Okay, so because Thomas Hobbes concept and entire psychology was basically governed by fear, and his basic motive was security of life, he preferred monarch. He preferred one monarch. Okay, monarch is your Leviathan according to Thomas Hobbes. Because in what is aristocracy? Rule of few. In rule of few, there are, say, 4 or 5 people ruling over you. Sovereignty gets divided. Sovereignty gets divided. All right. In democracy, was what was democracy? Rule of many. How can many people have sovereignty? How can many people have absolute power? It's impossible. All right. So it is illogical, and that's the reason why he preferred monarchy, rule of one. That one person, Leviathan, will be the one who is creating laws, who is making laws, who is interpreting law. So that one person is doing everything, making law, legislature, executing law, executive, adjudicating the law, and interpreting the law, judiciary. So legislature, executive, judiciary, all functions put together is only in one person called absolute sovereign. That's why he preferred a monarch. Class, you have to also understand that Hobbes comes from UK. UK has always had a tradition of monarchy. So they will generally prefer monarchy. All right. Like basically, when I told you about Aristotle and Plato, they were aristocratic. They were elitist. That's the word I used. That they were elitist. Plato and Aristotle are called as elitists because they belong to an elite society. So they wanted their rule. Okay. Philosopher king is again rule of elites. So your thinkers generally reflect the society they live in. So monarchy is also preferred by Thomas Hobbes because he comes from Britain. Okay, and Britain has always had monarchy. All right. So because of this entire concept, even Machiavelli spoke about the same thing. Now understand the history of your society. When you understand the history, you understand the kind of rule required. That's why Thomas Hobbes says lawless people, okay, the ones governed by passion, require a absolute sovereign. So sovereign is going to have all the three functions: to make laws, to execute and implement those laws, and to adjudicate or interpret the laws. And all of this three is going to be based on monarchy. He says not aristocracy, neither democracy. Not too many people. Too many cooks spoil the broth. It will create problems. One sovereign, one monarch. So that's why he preferred monarchy. All right. Second, subjects had no appeal against the will of the state, no method of periodic renewal of consent of the sovereign. You cannot appeal against the state. How will you appeal against the state when he himself is the interpreter of law? Imagine the situation: the monarch or the Leviathan makes laws. Okay, so he's your parliament also. He executes laws. He's your government also. He is the one who is going to adjudicate the laws. Go against the, can you go and complain against the sovereign to sovereign himself? So you will go and it's like all going and telling the sovereign, I have a complaint against you yourself. Impossible. Sovereign will say, get lost. You cannot complain against me. Who created me? You created me. Who gave me absolute sovereignty? You gave me absolute sovereignty. How? Through the contract that all of you entered. Now that you gave me absolute sovereignty, you gave me complete supreme command to make laws, to interpret laws, and to implement those. You do not get any appeal against me. You cannot come and question me. Sorry, not allowed. All right. Plus, there is no method of periodic renewal of consent also. Okay. Why there is no method for periodic renewal of consent? Because what did I tell you? Contract is perpetual and irrevocable. Why do you require renewal? When it is not perpetual, it is only for certain particular period of time, say 10 years. After 10 years, you have to renew it. The concept of reservations in India were only for 10 years. Every 10 years, we pass an amendment to increase it by 10 years more. Okay. So which was supposed to get over 1960s is still continuing. All right. So the contract, the social contract of Hobbes is perpetual and irrevocable. No appeal. You cannot go and go and complain to the sovereign against sovereign himself. Illogical. Plus, the contract itself, Hobbes said, is perpetual and it is irrevocable. So why do you require renewal? Your future generations are also bound by this contract and they have to follow absolute sovereign. So what is he trying to do here? By giving you no appeal and by giving you no renewal of consent, he is establishing absolute power of a sovereign. He is giving all the rights to the sovereign so that any future cases in any future generations does not break the contract. Because in case you break the contract, because the single contract which created society and the state, breaking of a single contract will lead to complete anarchy. It will lead to complete anarchy and you'll again go back to state of nature. Okay, so that is Hobbes' biggest fear. If you break the contract, you will again go back to anarchy. Okay, so that's why he says no, this contract is going to be perpetual. Your all future generations are bound by this contract. No periodic renewal, no questioning, and no appeal against it. Once you create a contract, now you're bound by that contract forever. Because if you go against it, straight, you will enter back into your state of nature. The contract ends. You'll go back to state of nature, constantly fighting. And man does not want to do that. Man does not want to do that because the reason in man will tell him, no, boss, rather than dying, I'll better survive under absolute sovereign. So, according to Hobbes, state and society came into existence together through a single contract. So, repudiation of contract would result in an overthrow of state, but also disintegration of society. So, he treats sovereignty as absolute and inalienable. I've already explained to you this. Now, remember where I told you that in social contract, all rights, all natural rights, the 19 rights that people had were surrendered to the sovereign except one right. Shubhra Ranjan calls it right to life. Okay. Plato to Marx. Sushila Ramaswamy calls it right to self preservation. Choose whatever you want to. All right. You can call it right to life also, or you can call it right to self preservation also. That one right, right to self preservation or right to life, was not given to the sovereign because sovereign was created only to give me a peaceful life. All right. So that thing always remained with me, that life, right to life, the right to self preservation always remained with me because I wanted to protect myself. I wanted to live, not die. And because I wanted to live, I entered a contract giving all my rights to govern myself to an absolute sovereign. But that absolute sovereign had one limitation. That limitation was to guarantee my right to life. That sovereign cannot make me kill myself, or he cannot kill others. All right. So that right to self preservation was kept with me. And that right to self preservation was basically one inalienable right because right to life, nobody can take away your life. Nobody can kill you. All right. Nobody can kill you. So, for that reason, according to Thomas Hobbes, even if all the natural rights were given away by the social contract to Leviathan, Leviathan had to guarantee right to self-preservation or right to life. If in any way he gave you a reason to believe that people's life may not be protected by Leviathan, people have a right to resist the sovereign. Class, I am using the word resist, not revolt. They can resist the sovereign, all right, but they cannot revolt. So if right to self preservation is threatened by absolute sovereign, by Leviathan, people can resist him. They cannot revolt against him. Okay. So what is only one limitation on absolute sovereign? Right to self preservation has to be guaranteed. Right to life has to be guaranteed. Right to self preservation and right to life of the people cannot be threatened. If that is threatened, then individuals who made the contract have right to resist the sovereign. So finally, you understood human nature. Because of human nature, state is an individual writ large. Plato reflects your state of nature. State of nature was anarchy. Okay. Even if there was natural law, natural equality, people led to anarchy. So people had two choices: remain the way you are in complete anarchy, or go for an absolute authority. The reason which was still inactive or passive to your passions finally said, people, please, let's survive, let's live peacefully if possible. So the reason led to creation of a contract. That contract created a state and handed over all the powers to a third party, because people like you and me, Hobbes did not trust us at all with anything, with giving any power, because we're selfish. He's created a social contract wherein each one of us, human beings, gave away our power to a third party called Leviathan, who is absolute, who is an absolute sovereign. He is the maker of law, he is the implementer of law, he is also the interpreter of law. So, no appeal, no renewal of consent. The contract you have entered to create Leviathan or a sovereign is perpetual, irrevocable. Only one limitation on sovereign. That sovereign, that Leviathan, has to protect your right to life or right to self-preservation. If he doesn't do that, you have a right to resist the sovereign. But you cannot overthrow. Okay, you cannot revolt, because Hobbes's basic fear was if you overthrow, you'll again go back to state of nature. Because State and society came together through a single contract. So if the state that is governed by absolute sovereign is repealed, there will be no society. You will again go back and revert back to state of nature and start fighting with each other. So only right to resist is given. You can resist the sovereign, you cannot revolt against him. So what is the nature of state? Human nature followed by your state of nature, terms of contract, creates the nature of state as absolute sovereign. Main bolo so kaida. Okay, what is absolute sovereign? He is the source of law and interpreter of law. Only limitation is right to life of people should be guaranteed. Okay, so it conveys that government doesn't rest on sheer force but on the will of the people. Okay, it is the people who are surrendering the rights. And second, Hobbes is different from Locke. Now, when I teach you Locke in the next lecture, you will see Locke is absolute antithesis of Hobbes. While Hobbes believes pessimistic view of human nature, okay, governed by passion, Locke says men are very reasonable, good people. So good people does not require an absolute state. Okay, so Hobbes wanted order. That's why he created absolute sovereign. What did Hobbes want? Order. So he created absolute sovereign. All right. While Locke wants freedom. So he's creating a limited sovereign. Last quote. Okay. Last quote. Covenant without swords are nothing but words, is the essence of his approach to natural law. What was natural law? Akansha also asked me natural law. I said, what is natural law? One which is in nature, but which is not enforceable. What do you mean by enforceable? Breaching a natural law does not give you punishment. There is no penalty associated with it. That's why it is a natural law. What is civil law? Civil law is a law, according to Hobbes, created by Leviathan. Because it is created by Leviathan through a contract, okay, that law is going to give you penalties if you disfollow, if you unfollow, or if you try to defy a particular law. That's why Thomas Hobbes was very satisfied that natural law is not a way to go. Civil law is required, law backed by the absolute sovereign who can punish you, who can give you coercive punishment is needed. So covenants without swords are nothing but words, meaning any law which is made without punishments is not going to be obeyed by people, because people, according to Thomas Hobbes, are not obeying. Okay, they are very selfish people. All right, it required them to constantly fight with each other and kill people to realize that, boss, let's enter a contract and create an absolute sovereign. So with such people, obedience, obligation is not something which is natural to them. So what is the meaning of it? It's simplistically saying, according to Hobbes, state shall have power to punish the lawbreaker. Just making a law by Leviathan is not enough. Punishment is required. When a law and its what you can say implementation is backed by coercive action, is backed by a fear of punishment or penalty, only then you will follow it. Otherwise, people will not follow it. That's the basic concept here. Covenants without swords are nothing but words, meaning a law to be followed has to have fear of punishment. Otherwise, people will not obey it. All right. John Austin also spoke about the same thing. He's talking about a legal sovereignty. What is legal sovereignty? Everything, every law is basically legal. Why is it legal? Because it has a power to punish you for breaching of that law. So there is a determinate source of law coming from Leviathan. Law is what? It's a command of the sovereign. It's a law made by the sovereign, and you have to follow it, because if you do not follow it, there will be a penalty. So it's determinant. Law has to be determinant from a determinate source. It has to be a command of a sovereign, made by a sovereign, followed by penalty. It has to have penalty. Only when a penalty is given, people will obey the law. That's why covenants have to have swords. Otherwise, nobody will follow it. It's similar to what John Austin is also talking about. All right, we'll stop here. Tomorrow we'll deal with Locke. We have already extended time for a lot. Anybody has any questions? I doubt, but still. Have you understood law, Hobbes? Class, tired? Okay, so we'll stop here then. We'll stop here. Okay, it's almost 2 hours lecture. We finished 2 hours lecture. All right. Tomorrow I'll teach you lock. All right. Okay, we'll stop here then. If you don't have any questions, we'll stop here. 1 second. There was a question. People expect monarch to always be right. No. No, no, no. Monarch is not right. I was just giving an explanation only from Hobbes' point of view. See, we're studying Hobbes' point of view, no? It's teaching you Hobbes' social contract. So it's only from Hobbes' point of view. Hobbes feels monarch, that is absolute sovereign. See, this entire concept of absolute sovereign is a make believe. Okay, it's not true, and it is a make believe thing. There's nothing called as absolute sovereign. Okay, that so basically monarch was what was present in United Kingdom. So monarch is one person who should have power. So you cannot always say monarch is right. All right, this entire Cromwell, I told you about the civil war which happened. I gave an example of civil war 1642, which made Hobbes believe that man is constantly fighting with each other and man is fearful, is basically wherein people were fighting with each other. Parliamentary forces were basically by Cromwell, led by Cromwell, were fighting against monarchy. So monarchy is never always right. Civil war itself is an answer to it. Civil war happened because monarch was not right. So people cannot always expect monarch to be right. This is Hobbes. And Hobbes is again, it is an utopian concept. Okay. Please understand social contract never happened. I hope have answered your question. Can we say chasing pleasure for long term is a form of pain too? Current Hobbes is not going into so much of in details of it. Okay, he's only using pain and pleasure concept to justify creation of a absolute sovereign. So don't go into all of this, not needed. Just understand man has reasons and passions. Passions are more active than reason. All right, whatever gives him pain, man will avoid it. Whatever gives him pleasure, man will go for him. Okay, please do not enter into all of this. Okay, it's only just to make him understand, just to justify his absolute sovereignty. All right, so only learn those words from Hobbes' point of view. All right, we're not sitting here to study psychology, so just ignore all of that. All right, it's again, I'm repeating, social contract never happened. It is artificial, it is make believe. Okay, anybody? I think Karan is typing something. Karan, you have any further questions? Students, if anybody of else you do not have any questions, you can feel free to leave. Okay, we'll stop here. I'll see you tomorrow. All right, bye.